Hello, welcome to the West Tigers podcast. It's episode number 107. We've got a full house today. Declan McCutcheon and Gary Watson and myself, Eddie Otto. Boys, it's good to wake up on a Monday after a win.
Very nice.
Very much so, yes.
Any particular word to describe it, Declan, your feelings today?
Oh, just relief. Very glad to finally get a win for our mental health, all three of us, and all the West Tigers fans out there. Just good to wake up on a Monday morning, not depressed.
Yeah.
Finally a win.
Yeah. Finally a win. I had something a bit more positive, boys. I had whitewash because we went to Wollongong and we won all three grades. That was I remember growing up, that was a thing. I wasn't at the game, but you used to go and watch all three grades, and we're currently, Declan, sitting with 5 wins and 1 loss in the Jersey Flegg, which I believe is under 20s or under 21s.
It's under 21s this year. It got changed because of COVID, and to make sure like all the players didn't miss out, they changed it to under 21s.
So West Tigers second place behind Penrith in Jersey Flegg, and West Magpies second place behind Penrith in the New South Wales State Cup. I mean, that shows how good Penrith are going. They're top three. They're top of all 3 grades, which is a club championship wrapped up already, probably after 7 rounds. But Declan, that's got to be something. I know first grade was an ugly game, but to have the 3 wins on one day at an opposition's ground, that's got to be satisfying.
Yeah, I think it shows that the club is doing a really good job of kind of recruiting throughout all the grades, and hopefully we can start seeing that kind of progress to first grade soon. Like maybe not straight away, but I think in the next few years we're definitely going to see some of the players that like are kind of excelling in these teams right now. Because remember 2012 when like our under 20s team did so well, all the good players we got from that. So hopefully that can be a sign of what's to come.
Is that something, Gary, you think someone like Adam Hartigan has to take credit for, or is it just a crop coming through? I obviously haven't seen any of the Jersey Flegg. It's a shame that the under 20s isn't sort of on TV anymore, but it seems like just looking at the discussion on the forum, there's a fairly decent crop coming through.
I think it really shows the recruitment strategy of the club at the moment, led by Adam Hartigan. There's a clear plan when identifying the youth and the type of players they're looking for. Reserve grade and Jersey Flegg being close to the top of the table kind of really shows where we're heading over the next 5 years.
Good point. And I looked at the paper this morning, boys, and you know the media, they do get all over us when we lose, but it was the front page of the Sydney Morning Herald was Tigers back with a win, and the back page and the inside cover of the back page. So it just goes to show the potential if we were ever to go, be a top 4 team on a winning streak, that not only fans but media would get behind it, because it obviously sells papers talking about the Tigers.
Yeah. And I think that's it probably just shows that I don't like saying the sleeping giant kind of tag, but I do agree with you. I think if we're ever to like kind of have like a winning season, I think the sleeping giant potential could be huge for us. Because remember when we had that like 5 out of 6 start to 2018, just the crowds we got there, like something like that would be huge if we could one day emulate it, hopefully very soon.
We spoke last week, Gary, on the podcast about a lot of things, about question the effort of the team and around whether they were playing for Michael Maguire. Putting aside the fact it was an ugly sort of game, were those questions answered yesterday in terms of effort, or is it sort of something that can only be answered down the track?
I think it was partially answered yesterday. The effort was far and away much better yesterday. The support amongst the players was also a lot better than what we've been seeing. The support around Sini when he scored was something we haven't really seen this year, so that was quite impressive. So I think it's kind of half answered that question. The way they fully answered that question is by backing it up over the next 3 weeks and doing it again and again and again. That's when we really see what this side's made of and how they are actually putting in.
Yeah, that was something I noticed a couple of times when Dane Laurie made that outstanding play in the in goal. Even Joey Leilua getting around him. We saw James Tarmo pumping his fist at the end. There seemed like a concerted effort, Declan, from a couple of the senior players who have been a little bit underwhelming, to be a little bit more emotionally maybe invested in some of the bit of the game yesterday.
Well, yeah, you can't really blame them. You would imagine that they're all under like a lot of pressure. Guys like Tarmo, guys like Leilua, who probably have come under like a lot of like media spotlight as well as fan criticism as well. So you'd imagine a win would definitely just take the pressure off their shoulders for sure.
I saw the post-game interview with Adam Dewey. I think it was with Channel 9, and Gary, to me, he screams that he's going to be the next Tigers captain. I just really liked what he said. I know it's not all about words, it's about actions. But he said, we just really wanted to play for the jersey, for the fans, and for Madge, who's had a rough 4 or 5 weeks. And to me, that showed that he's got a bit of, something upstairs, a bit of fortitude, and it really means something to him to win games.
Yeah, I think he's actually showing that on the field as well. He's an effort player. He's quite often carrying 2 or 3 players with him. He seems to do a lot of talking. A lot of the organisation has fallen to him now. So, I can see him being a captain in the next couple of years. I'd like to see him kind of still develop his 5'8" play before we actually put that captain's tag on him as well. But, things are looking really good for him.
We'll get to, parts of breaking down yesterday's game, because it probably wasn't the highest quality game, but did that sort of stand out for you, Declan? Was there anyone? I thought the turning point for me, even though we probably, to be fair, we dominated most of the stats. Like if you just looked at the stats, we had 7 line breaks to 1. We ran for, I think, over 400 more metres than St George. We had 45 tackle breaks and we only missed 13 tackles. So if you looked at that, you'd probably think, well, the Tigers must have won this by 20 or 30. So I guess my question is that a positive that we're able to really dominate those stats, or is it a bit of a worry that we only won the game 16-8 given that statistical dominance?
I think it's a positive. We also had 20 offloads to their 5, so that was another good sign of us winning the contact. But I think, to be fair to St George, I think they scrambled really well on a couple of occasions when we made a line break. But at the same time, I do think that sometimes we took the wrong option to play after a line break as well when we're on the line. So I think definitely a top 8 team probably would have won by more, and a top 4 team might have put 50 on them against the Dragons. But you can only really a win's a win, and we have it in the bank now, and hopefully we can just build on that.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt we were advantaged by the fact they lost their 2 wingers during the week, and they lost Zach Lomax after 20 minutes. But we didn't do anything, Gary, to shoot ourselves in the foot in this game in terms of giving away silly penalties or dumb errors. I think we completed it at over 85%.
Yeah, especially once we got through that first 20 minutes. I thought the first 20 minutes we were actually quite poor. A few little silly things. Joey Leilua, who I actually thought played quite well yesterday. The offload to Nofaluma where Nofaluma went into touch, that was a poor option. But outside of that, there wasn't a lot of kind of really dumb play yesterday, which we're seeing quite a bit so far this season. So I think it was an improvement in that regard. We still have a lot of work to do on our attack. But as Declan said, a win's a win. And at this point in the season, we really can't be complaining about a win.
No, well, it's been, I can't remember the last time, Declan, we kept the side under 10 points. I know we've been on a record of just recently broken against South, keeping a side under 20. But, I suppose defensively, the Dragons, they didn't ask many questions, but there were instances there where they challenged us late, like even Luke Brooks's tackle, I think it was 7 or 8 minutes ago on a back row that was sort of bursting onto the ball. That was a really good example of just putting your body in front and forcing the error.
Yeah, I think that last time we kept a team under 20 points was the Brisbane Broncos game at Leichhardt last year when we beat them 50-0. But it's been a while since then. But I feel like the Dragons, they kind of made crucial mistakes at really clinical points in the game that kind of let us off the hook a little bit. So especially in that second half, I never really felt that we were too under the pump on our own line, which was really good considering because, I think this team has proven that they can't really defend back-to-back sets under pressure. But I feel like there was some good one-on-one tackles. Like Brooks had one. I think Moses Mumbai had one on Tarek Sims as well, where he lodged the ball off of him. So, you can only really beat what's in front of you. And I think we were due to come against a team not in form. So I'll take that.
Certainly take it. Gary, Madge made a few adjustments during the week in the forward pack in terms of positioning, moving offhand Gowie to lock back in the middle and Garner to the left edge and Luciano Leilua to the right edge. Do you think that's a mix that can work better?
I thought it worked quite well yesterday. The only issue I have is Luciano wasn't getting as much early ball to kind of get a bit of steam up yesterday. I think offhand Gowie's much better playing as a middle. So playing at lock or playing at prop, I think he's doing much better there. He's not a second row, especially in defence. He makes some very bad reads when he's defending a little bit wider. So I was pleased to see him move back in the middle, and I thought he had a fairly decent game yesterday.
And looking at this competition, boys, I mean, it's quite remarkable. I reckon by the end of the year there could be about a 10-point gap between the team running fifth and the team running sixth. So you look at as bad as our start of the year has been, with 2 wins and 6 losses, and a differential that was around about minus 100. We're currently sitting 2 points behind the 8th place Titans, and sitting in 6th is the side that we sort of beat up on yesterday, the Dragons. So, I mean, I can see a situation, Declan, this year where a team finishes in 8th place, and I reckon they'll have 10 wins and 14 losses, because I think the top 5 are so much better than everyone else.
Yeah, I think it's been a real point of conversation, hasn't it? Just the gap between the bottom teams and the higher up teams, and yeah, it's just crazy because you look like a team like Melbourne and or even the Roosters, even when they still have that depleted team, just like their star power, it's just absolutely insane. But yeah, it's crazy just how even though we've had such a bad start to the year, if we beat the Titans this week, it's kind of game on, isn't it? We're still very much in the finals hunt, so it just comes to show you how much like 2 or 3 wins in the trot can get you in this competition at the moment, because the middle is so tight as opposed to the top end of the ladder.
Well, those 5 teams, Gary, at the top: Penrith, Storm, Roosters, Rabbitohs, Parramatta. I think we could play our best game of the year and not beat them at all. But I look at teams like in the next few weeks, we've got the Titans and the Warriors, and they're sort of sitting 6th and 7th, and we're 14th. But I think if we turn up and play our best game, potentially you could beat them on the day.
Yeah, most definitely. The next couple of weeks are really critical for us. If we have a good run over the next couple of weeks, that top 8 does start to appear on the horizon, that we could actually get there for the end of the year. That those top sides are far and away better than the bottom half of the competition. It's not, the difference is not funny at the moment. And I agree. I don't think it really matters how well we play against those top sides. I don't think we're going to really push them, but we have a very big chance over the next 2 to 3 weeks of getting a couple of wins and building a bit of momentum moving into the second half of the season.
Well, I think it's Titans, I'm not sure exactly the order, but Titans, Warriors, Knights. So we're all sides that are going to be competing for that 7th and 8th spot over the next few weeks before there is a horror run in the middle of the year, which is during Origin, where I think we have Penrith, South, Melbourne, and Parramatta in consecutive weeks. So if we're ever going to try and make a bit of a run, 3 or 4 wins in a row, it has to be now. Real positives from yesterday. Declan, I thought Dane Laurie again, probably his most complete game. Over 170 run meters, a couple of line break assists. For me, the encouraging thing was there looked to be a little bit more understanding and combination around the spine about where he was going to be and chiming in. And whereas previous weeks he seemed to be sort of just doing it off his own bat.
Yeah, I was really critical of the team in the last few weeks because it just seemed that they were kind of using Dane Laurie as kind of a second 5'8", across the field, but there just wasn't enough space for him, and he would often have 2 guys on him, and he'd get shut down pretty quickly. But I feel what he did really well this game was he kind of ran off the back of Adam Doueihi a lot, and those 2 in particular did a really good job of kind of just taking advantage of the space that was in front of them as opposed to trying to go wide and around them. I think they made Josh Carr's life 11 hell playing in the back row for the first time this season for him. I think they really did a really good job of taking advantage of that mismatch. And it's really pleasing to see because those guys, I think they're both 22 years old. So, if they stay healthy on the field and keep building that combination, I think it's going to be something really good to watch. Because I thought they were a bit unlucky not for Adam Doueihi to score under the post as well from that kind of set piece play. I think he just got ankle tapped before he could really stride out. So yeah, that would probably be the highlight of the game for me, that combination.
Well, that was a play that stuck in my head. It was sort of something where Dane Laurie was acting as a fullback, running off on the inside of his 5'8", Gary. That I mean, there were, like you said, there were opportunities there that were spurned, and the fact we only scored 16 points with those stats is still a big concern. But we did create opportunities yesterday, 7 line breaks to 1.
What was pleasing to see for me, and we're still not doing it enough, but we're actually a little bit deeper in attack. That made a huge difference to our outside ball players. So it made a big difference to Laurie. It made a big difference to Doueihi. It just gave them a little bit more time. We are still far too often playing too flat. But anytime we got a little bit deeper in attack yesterday, we seemed to make a break. Giving both Laurie and Doueihi a little bit more time with the ball in their hands and the ability to have players running outside them onto the ball, which is what we saw yesterday, made a huge difference. And I agree, that play The outside-inside ball to Laurie, that was a real piece of work that I really enjoyed seeing yesterday.
It's interesting discussion at the moment around Adam Doueihi, because I think a lot of, Andrew Johns, I don't know, like they've had 5 Channel 9 games, the Tigers, and so, Andrew Johns and Brad Fittler, and Andrew Johns was rapping him big time saying, he's been sensational for the year, but you go through the fans who watch and they go, is he still running the ball too much? But I read a couple of comments that said, look, a good 5'8", a strong-bodied 5'8", that's part of their armoury, is to set up the run first and then have the ability to know that because you've been running a lot, Declan, you're then able to use that short ball as a weapon.
Yeah, you got to keep the defense guessing. You got to be able to mask your movement, and I think that's Doueihi's strongest part is running game. He's a big dude. Like, you want him to try and isolate the defender, the smaller half, or the smaller center. I don't really agree with him running the ball too much. I don't really agree with that criticism on the forum. I think whenever they're in attack, the quicker that it's not in Luke Brooks' hands and the quicker it's in Adam Doueihi's hands, I kind of feel much better about the set and the potential to score, because I just think he's got so much more going on for him. He's got so much more weapons he can pull out, and he looks really strong. I don't really understand why you wouldn't want him to run more. I think doesn't make sense to me.
No, I agree with that. And look, I want to praise Luke Brooks for yesterday, because his kicking game was really on song in terms of he landed bombs on the try line every time he got an opportunity, which led to a try or two. He tackled strong, and there's no doubt Luke puts in effort every game. He's never been one to raise the white flag. But there's a but coming, Gary. I just think at the moment we have so many opportunities inside the opposition 20 where it just looks like we have no sort of idea what we're doing.
He did some things really well yesterday, as you were just saying. He actually controlled the game quite well and moved us around the park quite well. A couple of concerns I had, the couple of proper line breaks we made where we were tackled, and we actually had space around him. And again, he took the wrong options. He seemed to panic in those situations a little bit, which is kind of been part of his game this year, that he gets a little panicked in those sort of situations. And we're still one of the worst teams attacking inside the 20 metre that I've seen in a number of years. I don't feel confident at all that we're going to score when we're in that 20 metres. We kind of just shuffle it one way, shuffle it the other. So that's somewhere where he needs to actually take control and create some space for those players around him. But it was a much improved performance from him yesterday.
Yeah, that's the thing, Declan, that sort of concerns me, is that if Doueihi's going to be, which we think, a really strong player, but predominantly a running 5'8" with good short ball, you need a halfback that's going to be a really good ball player. And I just don't know if Luke's ever going to be a really good ball player. That just frustrates the hell out of me when we make those line breaks and the next play we've got a 4-on-3, or you know which side you have to go, and he sort of runs the other way or runs, and it just seems like that's an area of his game that's never quite that ruthless or that vision to sort of nail when you've got the opposition on the ropes.
Yeah, he just looked two minds, and that slight second of hesitation was the difference between us scoring and him getting tackled. It's really frustrating, because it does sound like we're being picky, but at the end of the day, you need your halfbacks. And all the good teams, the halfback of the team, they always give an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. This is just the high expectations you need from one of your highest paid players, one of your most important positions. And although he did some good things last night, I do agree. I just think at crucial points he really needed to take control and kind of get the ball wide, and he just didn't really do that.
Young Jake Simpkin is just re-signed last week, which was, I think everyone was very happy about that, Gary. But I still unsure whether he's ready for 80 minutes. We know Madge subbed him yesterday with 22 minutes to go. I actually thought he had quite a poor game yesterday with his service out of dummy half.
Yeah, I thought his service wasn't good enough yesterday. A couple of forward passes, which aren't completely on him. Joey Leilua overran him twice. But as a hooker, you can't throw those passes. You have to hold on to the ball. Even get tackled in that situation is much better than actually passing it. But in saying that, he's 19. It's his second game. I would like to see Little come onto the bench to kind of give him a bit of a break and have quite a strong replacement for him. that's what I'd like to see in the side tomorrow. But I can give him an off game when he's just starting out in his career.
Interesting, Declan, because Jake Liddell's gone back to State Cup and done pretty much exactly what Jake Simpkin was doing. I think he scored a hat-trick yesterday in a win for a hooker. And apparently, I haven't seen all the game, but looks a class above. He'd be pressing for a recall, maybe not a start, but a position on that bench, even though Madge seems to, plug that hole with Moses and Bai every week.
Yeah, I really don't understand that, because when Mumbai came on, it kind of just looked like we had the mindset of we're just going to hold on here when he came on, because although he was fresh, he's not a dummy half. He doesn't have the IQ around the ruck, or the kind of, I don't know, speed or athleticism that Liddell has to really take advantage of those quick play of the balls, of those lazy markers, of those Russian defenses. And I just don't know why we have him there. Obviously the utility value is really important, but I would rather just have a gun hooker there who I know is going to come in with 20 minutes either side of halftime and just kill the fatigued forwards. I just don't think we're getting that from Mumbai. And I don't think the trade-off is worth it, that Mumbai can play centre if there's an injury. I'd rather just put Liddell there so you can take advantage and, maybe put on some more attacking pressure on the team, on the opposition team.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think yesterday would have been a perfect opportunity for someone like Jake to come in fresh and really carve up a Dragons tie that was just hanging on to the game. But, Moses hasn't been terrible off the bench, and maybe something like they could all be on the field and have Moses at that lock role where he sort of does a bit of ball playing might be worth considering. Let's talk about the debutant, though, Gary. Zach Sini, he had half the crowd there was his mates yesterday. It was that was pretty cool to see, wasn't it? Because it's been a while since we've had a young guy come in and have a happy debut like that, a try and a win.
Just the enthusiasm he brought to the team. That's something that's really been lacking in our team this year. It's been a while since we've seen our players getting around each other and actually look like they're enjoying themselves on the field. So that was good to see. I thought he played very, very well yesterday for his debut. Was unlucky not to get a try with that first one. Again, I hate the way they're doing the video ref this year. To have a guy score a try like that and then have the try awarded, walk back and have it taken away from him, just doesn't sit right with me. So I was very pleased to see him score in the corner. A lot of work out of dummy half, made a lot of yards yesterday. Looks very impressive. Hopefully he can keep it up over the next 2 to 3 weeks, and we may have a real winner on our hands there.
Yeah, well, he's actually a Panthers junior, Declan. That's interesting. He's not someone we sort of plucked off the street. He's got some pedigree. He played Australian schoolboys with, I think, Bradman Best and a few other guys who've gone on to really make their mark in the NRL. He was averaging about 190 run metres as a fullback in State Cup. Where do you see him sort of slotting in for the rest of the year? Is wing or centre going to be his spot to try and nail down in his first grade team?
I think, obviously the current position for him is probably the wing, but I would love to see him move to the centres if an opportunity came up, just purely because I think that's his preferred position. I think that's where he's played most of his footy coming through the grades, and I just think he's very elusive. He can get on the outside of someone really well, and just based off the trials as well, I thought he looked a lot better at centre than wing, I think, and I'd like to see him get an opportunity there. But it's kind of tough because we don't really have too much wing depth at the moment, so you might need to stay out there for the short term anyway.
What do you reckon? Just looking ahead, sort of in the short to medium term, Gary. Sounds like James Roberts is going to be out for a few weeks, but I mean, Zach showed more in that game than James Roberts has shown all year for me.
Yeah, it was good to see him get on the outside of the player and make that big break he made down the field. Would have been better if the television coverage covered it a little bit better, but he put on a nice move to get on the outside of his player, and he was away. He seemed reasonably quick with acceleration. I don't know what his top pace is like. But yeah, I could see maybe a move some point into the centres, especially now Talau's got a suspension he's facing. I haven't heard the result, whether he's taken the early play yet, but I know he's facing a suspension for a shoulder charge. So we need to look at something for that centre position.
Declan, any other big positives or negatives to come out of the game? No forwards sort of ran for big meters during the game, but I suppose that they nullified some of the Dragons' big guys, like Tarek Sims had a quiet game.
Yeah, I thought even though the stats weren't very impressive, I thought the forwards collectively had a very strong game. I thought Alex Chua had his best game for a very long time. I'm a big fan of him going back to prop. I just feel like he looks more effective from there, and he doesn't really have to worry about creating like second phase play or anything like that. And I thought Yuta Gamanu, he was strong again. Like, although his stats weren't that good, I thought he had some really classy runs that kind of got us into good territory. And guys like McKaylee were good. I even thought Seyfarth kind of brought something off the bench as well. So I would say like the forward pack collectively would probably impress me.
Yeah, I thought last couple of weeks, Thomas McKaylee, even though he's not getting many minutes, Gary, I think he only got 20 minutes yesterday, but he seems to be running with a bit more gumption, a bit more fire in the belly.
I think the shorter stints are really suiting him. He's playing with a lot more impact. And that's kind of one thing we have lacked in our forward pack, is that player who does play with a little bit of impact. A lot of our players are more the push out good meters players, even though that's not what we achieved yesterday. But having someone who runs the ball a bit harder and actually bents the line a little bit was good to see. I thought McKaylee was quite strong yesterday. I actually thought in the first 20 minutes we really struggled in the forwards, and I was quite worried. We weren't making a lot of ground. St. George were all over us meter-wise. So it was good to see the changes we made actually had quite a positive effect during the rest of the game, and we improved in the forwards as the game went on.
Just finally, one of the topics, BJ Leilua, he's obviously off contract. Declan, people saying he had a great game. I thought he had a strong game. Obviously, he scored a strong try where he ran over Jack Bird, his sort of opposition number. But, man, I'd need to see a lot more before I considered re-signing him.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it was good for him to get that try, but that's kind of the expectations. It's not really like he's went above and beyond what we kind of expect of him. That's kind of what you need from him. You just need him to be able to ice like one-on-one situations like that. And I thought he probably could have done a little bit more dirty yard work at the middle of the field as well. He kind of gave that silly offload to Nofaluma where he went out as well. But it's a good sign. Like, you can tell he looks a little bit fitter. I think that spell in New South Wales Cup probably did him well for his fitness and maybe his confidence as well, because he kind of looks like he's kind of got a little bit more fire at the moment in terms of how he's playing, and maybe that confidence is just what he needed.
Well, we thought, boys, we'd look ahead because it was a good win, and we got Titans coming up this week. Obviously, Monday night team hasn't been named yet, but we'd sort of just look into the future and looking at maybe round 1 next year. And I asked you boys to go away and come up with a 1 to 17, including some potential signings. We don't know if these are going to happen. There might be 100 to 1 to happen, but if you were looking at next year and putting together a list, how you go in terms of making re-signings or cutting players or adding players who are going well from reserve grade. Before we do that, boys, I just want to get a yes or no. I had a look at the off contracts for the end of this year at our club, and there were 8 players that came up, and I'm just going to get a simple yes or no whether you'd re-sign them if you had to make a decision tomorrow. So I'll go Declan, then Gary. We've got Tom Amona.
Yes.
Yep.
Gary?
Yeah, I would.
Michael Cheekham?
No.
No.
Zach Sini?
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's Jacob Little. This will be an interesting one, Declan, because I reckon there'll be some smart clubs that'll be looking around maybe and thinking, you know, he's going to want to start.
Yes, I would. If we could, I would definitely try and keep him.
On the right contract, yes.
Thomas McKaylee, Declan?
Yeah, I kind of thought no at the start of the year, but I've changed my answer to a yes.
The jury's still out for me. I think a few more games like he was played yesterday in the last couple of weeks, then I'll be saying yes, but he still needs to show that.
Russell Packer?
No. Oh, no.
I'm not even answering that.
Laughing, not even fair enough. Alex Seyfarth, I thought he's actually, I thought he was, for want of a better word, a bit of a plotter last year when I saw him in first grade, but he looks a bit stronger this year.
Yeah, I would sign him just purely because he wouldn't be on very much, and like the energy he brings, he's a really good guy to have around that kind of like New South Wales Cup kind of fringe first grade player in terms of depth. That was more than one word, but yeah, yes, I would re-sign him.
He's a good trainer as well, apparently, so he works quite hard. So yeah, I'd have him somewhere in the organisation. May not be top 30, but I'd have him around.
And Billy Walters.
Well, he's probably going.
I don't think he wants to.
Yeah.
Rumours he wants to go play for Dad in Brisbane. So, all right, boys, round 1 next year. looking into the crystal ball, let's start with the back line. Declan, give us your 1 to 5.
All right. So at fullback, I've got Dane Laurie. That one's pretty self-explanatory. And then I went David Nofaluma. Even though he's disappointed me to start the year, I think you've still got to kind of give him that long-term spot, and hopefully he'll like kind of pick it up. And then at centre, I've got Zach Sini because I just think that's his best position. I think he's going to show what he's got the best in that opportunity, and hopefully he can nail it for round 1. And then for number 4, I made a signing. I was struggling. I wasn't sure if I'd put Tommy Talau there, but then I looked at the off contracts, and I saw that Tessie New from the Brisbane Broncos is off contract. So I just kind of thought, like, he's a really good player. He reminds me of a young Tim Simona, and I just think he's in a bit of a bad position at the Broncos right now. And although I think it's unlikely, I think it'd be a smart idea by the Tigers just to kind of maybe have a look, see if he's willing to come down to Sydney, because he's definitely got the potential. And then on the wing, I went for kind of a young player. His name is Suni Turavu. I think, sorry if I butchered the pronunciation. So he's a fullback playing for the Penrith Panthers right now in the New South Wales Cup. And I remember having a conversation with a NRL scout, and I asked them who they thought was better out of Charlie Staines and Dane Laurie last year. And he said this kid was better than both of them. So he's off contract at the end of this year, and he's absolutely killing it in Cup right now. So I'll definitely be throwing a lot of money at him to try and get him over and give him a first grade spot.
Interesting. You've done some good scouting there. I think a lot of clubs at the moment, I mean, look at Reece Walsh. He looks like a superstar in waiting. He looks like the next Kalen Ponga, and he came out of Brisbane. And I did watch, is it Tessie New or Jesse New?
Tessie New, sorry.
I did watch play a first grade game a couple of weeks ago, and they have, even though they're struggling in Brisbane, they have a lot of exciting young players. I'm not going to be able to keep them all. Gary, how was your 1 to 5 different?
It was fairly similar. I think Laurie and Noffa's here for so long that we kind of have to have him in a spot. Centre's really the hard one. When I was looking at this, centre was the position I had most trouble with. I'd like to see Capola get a bit of time in the centres. He looked really good in that brief little time he had there before he did his ACL. So I'd like to see him get a little bit of a time in the centres. But I want a centre. We need to sign a centre from somewhere. I had a look at the off-contract list. There is not a lot there. I haven't seen Tessie play, so maybe that is an option. But yeah, I think we're very light on in the centres because I wouldn't be re-signing either Roberts or Leilua. So I think we need to go into the market in the centres.
Yeah, I saw.
And I've had Sini on the wing. Sorry, mate. Oh, yeah, Sini on the wing.
There's Nick Meaney off contract, Edric Lee, more sort of wingers, Ruben Garrick. So there's a few outside backs. Daniel Tupou, these are sort of guys that are experienced guys that might add something. Halves, I had Dewey and Hastings. I think it's Red Rover for Brooks end of this year, boys. Declan?
Yeah, I have Dewey and Hastings as well. I just look at the Super League. I watched Wigan play Hull, and Hastings, he just looks like that kind of general, just barking orders at everyone. I think he's really going to transition back at well in the NRL. And I just think he's the kind of halfback you need, someone who's going to organise the team and give direction. So as harsh as it is, I think I put Jackson Hastings ahead of Brooks there.
Gary?
In the halves, the only worry I have with Hastings and Dewey is it's a very slow halves pairing. There's not a lot of speed there. What I'd actually like to see us do, especially if we do continue to stay outside the 8, so I'd like to see Madden get a little bit of a go before the end of the season so we can see what we've got there. At this stage, I kind of have Madden penciled in, only due to that kind of lack of speed that I think Hastings and Dewey would cause. So I'd probably be looking at Hastings in that 5'8" kind of role that we've kind of had Mbai playing so far.
Hey, boys, front row, I've just got the obvious at the moment. James Tarmo is on a contract for another year. We've got Jake Simpkins just been re-signed and young Stefano stepping up from the bench. Declan?
Yeah, so the front row, I went with James Tarmo. He's the captain. I went Jake Simpkin. Although he had a bad game on the weekend, I really back him to develop and kind of become kind of a really classy hooker that we've been looking for, especially since Harry Grant's gone. And then I think I put Alex Twal at prop just purely because I think he's the kind of glue guy you kind of need in the front row. He does a lot of the 1% stuff. He's a really good defender. And if he can just work on his yardage game, I think he'd be like one of the better props in the competition.
Would you have Tyle and Tamo on the field at the same time, or would you kind of try and separate them a little bit?
Yeah, look, I would obviously try and separate them, but I just really I'm just not sure that Stefano's ready for a starting spot yet. And I thought Offengawi was really strong off the bench as well. So, like, I kind of don't want to have them together, but in terms of just experience, I think that it's kind of that's why I put them together. But I do get the point that like you like one explosive prop as opposed to like two kind of workhorses.
Yeah, and Stefano has looked much better coming off the bench. I thought he struggled a little bit when he was starting, but hopefully between now and the end of the year, he may be able to overcome that a little bit. He's still very, very young. Man, he looks like a real prospect though, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's a good player.
Gary, I went looking for a signing potentially in the back row. I think that's something where we could maybe plug a hole, but it was hard to find off-contract players. Who did you have starting in the back row next year?
It's an area I think we need to have a look at as well. I did have Bloor and Leilua. I did have a look at Dale Finucane as maybe a possibility in that position. Maybe kind of him in a position where we look at him as a second role, maybe as a prop as well. He's getting on a little bit in his career, though. I think he's 29 now. So that's an area I would like to see us get a signing. But again, it's really hard to identify. Maybe we need to shake the tree at a couple of clubs and kind of see what falls out in that kind of position. So at the moment, I have Bloor and Leilua with a possibility of a Dale Finucane, someone like that, as a signing.
Okay. Declan, your back row?
Yeah, so I had Bloor and Leilua on the edges, but I've actually went with Nathan Brown at 13. He's off contract at the end of the year. I know he got injured in the past game, but mate, he's a Tigers junior. He worked with Madge at South. He's exactly what we need. He has that line speed and aggression, and he can also ball play a little bit and offload. And I just think he might be a little bit expensive, but in terms of just like a forward leader on the field, he's just someone I would go after pretty strongly. And he's a Tigers junior as well that we shouldn't have let go in the first place. So,
yeah, add to the list. I mean, his injury actually, I don't think it was as bad as it looked. It looked like he's done his knee or something, but apparently he's in contention to play this week. It was a hip pointer or something. So,
yeah, that was weird.
Not a long-term injury there. Just before we sort of move on, is there any sort of trade value in any of our players, guys? I know it's not a huge thing in the NRL trading, like an NFL thing, but it sort of does, like someone like a David Norfoluma or a Luke Brooks, Gary, could they be used as bait to recruit someone that we need in a different area?
Possibly. I really don't think Nofaluma is going to be used in that kind of regard. It seems that the chairman at least has quite a high opinion of him, and we've just given him a long-term contract, so I can't really see him being used in that regard. Maybe Ambai could possibly be used in that regard, with us subsidising some of his payment and getting someone in return. So it is a possibility. It's not something I kind of planned for because it's really a hard one to try and organise when we're doing this sort of team. But those players are probably a possibility that might be able to get a run somewhere else.
Is there any value in, I had looked at, halves we have, I don't know what sort of contract Justin Hastings would be on, Declan. I don't know if you wanted to have a guess. I'd be pulling it out of the dark, but Sean Johnson, Matt Moylan, Scott Drinkwater, these guys are off contract. Is that something you consider still trying to strengthen that area if you were going to maybe trade a Luke Brooks to England or one of those clubs, or do you think it's putting him in the basket of Hastings doing and potentially Brooks still there?
I would be really interested with someone like Scott Drinkwater. I think he's still young enough, but has also shown enough potential in first grade to kind of warrant a contract. But if someone like Sean Johnson, if we get him for the right contract as well, I think that would also be something I would consider. But in terms of, I think I'm content with the halves we have at the moment. We also have some good young players like Jock Madden as well to consider coming up the ranks as well. But if the right opportunity was to present itself, I would definitely consider it, like a Sean Johnson or a Scott Drinkwater, for example.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Gary. I think you might have said, Adam Doueihi could potentially be a really strong centre. So would that be something you could consider if you had someone like a Sean Johnson partnering in Jackson Hastings, pushing Adam Doueihi to the centre?
To me, Doueihi is still a centre that's transitioning to 5'8". I still think if we were to pick him in his best position right now. His best position right now to me is a centre. In 12 months' time, I'm hoping, and from what I've seen so far, thinking he'll make the development. I'm hoping in 12 months' time his best position is going to be 5'8", and that's where I'd like to see him play. I think he needs to work on his ball playing a little bit, but I think the way he's progressing as a 5'8" is going really well at the moment. He was close to our best player yesterday. I just want to see him working on setting up his outside man a little bit better than he's doing at the moment. But apart from that, I think he's progressing really well. And yes, he could possibly play in the centres if we got someone else into the 5'8" role, but it's not really something I'd be looking at.
Hard enough predicting a starting team, let alone a bench, Declan. But did you have any other signings in there or guys that you've sort of in the team this year that might not be there next year?
So in terms of the bench, I've kind of I've kept it all in house. I've got Jacob Liddell at 14, assuming we can re-sign him, which kind of looks unlikely because I do agree. I think he'll probably get a starting spot somewhere else. But I put him in there, and then Stefano Udikamanu and Joe Fingawi. But someone I think is going to be in the mix for round one next year is actually Tukey Simpkins. I think he just returned from suspension in the reserve grade, and he had a bit of a rough game, but just his ability to create an offload, I think, is a real point of difference that a lot of our forwards aren't as good at. And he's still so young as well. So I think he can really potentially develop that part of his game. The only thing I would say with him is that I think his yardage needs to improve a little bit and his carries need to be a little bit more aggressive. But if he can fix that, I think he's going to be a real shout out for a debut either later on this year or round one next year.
So he's still very young as well.
Yeah, I think he's 19.
So any notable omissions there, Declan? You're 1 to 17. I noticed no Moses Mbai. Was there no Luke Garner?
Yeah, no Luke Garner either. I just think that he's too much of a front forward kind of player. Like he plays really well when we have momentum against teams like the Dragons or the Broncos, but against teams like South or Penrith, he kind of goes missing a little bit. And I just think we need to be really strict on stuff like that and cut it out as best we can.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you had no Luke Brooks, no James Roberts, no BJ Leilua.
Yeah, I've swung the axe.
Gary,
yeah, my bench was almost exactly the same. Actually, it is exactly the same as Declan's. I also had a few of the players, kind of those reserve sort of players. I think Tuolagi, at some point, he's looked quite good through the preseason and in the early rounds. I think he's that kind of really good backup player. I have Garner there as a backup player. I think Declan, as well as I, left out Musgrove in our sides as well. So he's kind of another one that would kind of be that second string backup players.
You see him, Declan, as someone who might be on the outer. He just re-signed though, but dropped this week. So he seems like one of those players with all the potential, but it just lacks discipline.
Yeah, because he through his own fault and no throw of his own as well. He's just kind of had either suspension or injury that's kind of halted his development a little bit. In the same way as Liddell. So I just think that he just hasn't really shown that he can be a cornerstone piece at this point. And the Manly game was just disappointing. There's just no way to kind of hide that. He just disappointed that he let the fans down, he let the jersey down. So it's kind of hard right now to kind of envision him in any long-term plans for the starting team or the bench spot anyway. But he could come back and play really well and get a bench spot. But right now it's not looking likely for me anyway.
This Titans game, Campbelltown, 5:30 this Saturday. Gary, you'd anticipate a pretty similar side? You certainly wouldn't be dropping Zach Sini off his debut. Maybe Jacob Liddell off a hat-trick in reserve grade could push for a bench spot.
Yeah, I think Talau's probably going to be out suspended. So I'd probably look at moving Mbai into the centres and bringing Little into that spot under the bench.
Okay, I think that would make perfect sense if Talau is suspended. Doesn't look like Jimmy the Jet's going to be making a comeback in the next week or two anyway. Sounds like he had a sternum injury. Declan, it's Titans have always side with points in them. Even when they've been bottom of the ladder, they've given us trouble. I think we've got a losing record fairly convincingly over the Titans over the past decade. It's really hard to know what to expect, isn't it? I wouldn't be surprised if we won by 20 or lost this game by 20.
Yeah. They definitely are a bogey team, but I tipped them last week, and I think that positive energy must have had something to do with it. So I think I'm going to tip them again.
Well, you did
at home
actually go out on a limb and say, I think we'll win by a couple of tries. It was 3 tries to 1. So I think you should give yourself a rap there. I sort of laughed when you said that. Gary, are you as confident this week, or do you think it's just throw the balls in the air and see which one comes down? We don't know.
Yeah, both these teams are kind of quite similar in the fact you don't know what you're going to get. You have a look at the Titans last week. They're up like 22-0 after 16 minutes, and then lost by almost 20. So you really don't know what you're going to get from the Titans. David Fafita could run wild on us, so it'll be quite interesting to kind of see. Hopefully, we show up with a similar intensity to last week, and we get the job done.
Well, they're certainly not a watertight defensive side themselves, the Titans. 22-0 up they were against the Broncos and conceding a heap of points. I reckon they'll probably go in slight favourites. I'm not sure. But certainly if we're ever going to win 2 in a row and make any sort of charge towards 8, it has to start this week. Before we wrap it up, boys, it's been a long podcast. Just if you had to tip a winner this year, I know we're basing our podcast on the Tigers, and I don't think it's going to be us this year, the winners of the NRL competition, but is there a side that stands out above the rest of that top 5, or do you think they're all really close together?
Like probably either Penrith or Melbourne for me. I think Penrith, like last year, they just look insane in terms of their squad, but I think Melbourne have the experience and as well as the talent to kind of win when it matters. So I'm going to tip them for the GF winners.
I think Penrith will go back to the grand final and they'll get it this year.
Yeah, I had a mate say the other day that he reckons they could go undefeated the whole year, which would be a pretty remarkable effort. I don't know if you watch the other guy, but I watched that Roosters game, Gary, and it's just like they have – I don't want to give the Roosters a rap. Like, I hate the Roosters, but they seem to have 2 or 3 season-ending injuries every week, and they have guys that fill in. And it's not just the attack. They have that intensity in defence. Like, they're just – it pains me to say it, but they're just – a well-run side, and just everyone seems to come in and do a job because they held Newcastle to 4 on their own ground, and I think they've got 6 or 7 or 8 season-ending injuries. Like I said, it's not something I want to do, but there's something there besides pure talent, I have to say.
It's having the right systems in place. I think Trent Robertson's kind of regarded as putting those systems in place where every player comes into the team, they know what their role is, they have a quite simple role, they know exactly what they've got to do, and they go out and do it. Sam Walker has been super impressive, though, for a young guy coming into what you usually wouldn't think is quite a difficult situation, but with the amount of players they've got out at the moment, it has been quite tough for him to come through, and he's been really good. It was the Morris injury the other night, though. As a fan of rugby league and not just a fan of the Tigers, that was really tough to see. Such a wonderful career, and to think it possibly ends that way was really disappointing and really hard to watch.
Yeah, I mean, he's been an exceptional player. And I had Canterbury mates that used to say a few years ago, oh, Morris boys are a bit washed up. And it just goes to show you, Declan, you put them in a good system, just how good they still are at age 34 or whatever. And it just annoys me because I look at the Roosters and I go, well, Drew Hutchinson, he might not get a game for the Tigers, but he seems to come in and every player that comes into that side does a job. Whereas you look at Newcastle on the flip side, they get 2 or 3 injuries and they're sort of like us. They can go to water very quickly.
Yeah. And then you look at the Tigers as well. Like we signed guys like James Roberts and Jolie Lua, and they get worse. But the Roosters, as you said, they sign guys like Brett Morris, Josh Morris, guys like that, and they go upper level. It's just annoying. But I think it's just something, the system is something you build over time with success and commitment. So, I don't know, whether Madge can do that or not over the long term is kind of the question we all want answered. And hopefully he can. I'm not 100% sure, but you got to be hopeful, I suppose.
Yeah, I still think at the moment, I'd say Melbourne, probably the best side in the competition given their spine. I think Harry Grant, he has been unbelievable again this year. I think Parramatta actually, Gary, again, side I hate. I think they're a better side than South. So I reckon Parramatta are a chance of making the grand final this year. Do you give them any chance?
In my mind, I always hope Parramatta fall over at the last post every time. They are a good side. Mitchell Moses still has to show that he can do it in the big games. At the moment, he hasn't done that yet. So if he can put it together in the big games, then they're a chance of winning. I think they're a tier below Melbourne and Penrith, though.
All right, boys. Well, it's been a long podcast this week. Good to do one off the back of the win. Let's hope we can back it up next week against the Titans. Yeah, thanks, boys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie.
Have a good week. See you guys.
Rising up, straight to the top. Had the guts, got the